Since we've last spoken, all kinds of things have happened, including, when we last spoke, was Trump even charged yet? I can't remember. It's quite a long time ago. I think he
I
probably already was, but
think he maybe was charged, but nothing had happened yet and it was still kind of a question as to whether he'd go to trial or anything like that.
which he did. So the
Yeah.
question was answered. So what's your sense of that? Because we're now coming up to some really key dates. The sentencing, which is I think it's July 11th, followed by the convention. But before that, the debate, which I keep hearing quite a few Democrats, oh, he's not going to show up. But I don't know. I'm wondering. I think he will because it's getting to be a bit late to pull out without looking like you're a chicken. And
Right.
what's your
Right.
sense?
Right. I kind of felt like he might try to pull out, but I felt like he wouldn't be able to, or it would just look like he was running. And the thing is that he doesn't care about running away. He doesn't want to look like he's running away, right? It's all you know what things look like for him. And I felt like there may be a few little attempts to kind of like uh you know kind of complain about the rules and what they're trying to, and I think that what it's going to do is, or what it's trying to do is soften the ground for him so that if things go badly, he can say, well, I told you the rules are in his favor and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like his people might feel like this, there's no real upside for Trump. It's not a great thing. And so all we're going to do is kind of take the time to just soften the ground so that when it doesn't go great or when he doesn't perform that well or when he says something crazy, they've laid the foundation to say, well, we told you this was going to happen or this, you know what I mean? So it kind of will look like they're in control, but I feel like his people are very, very worried about this. And everything is like that with him. They just don't know what he's so unpredictable for the people around him that there's always just this. I don't know how they can work in that circumstance, but it's like you've got the pit of your stomach is always in knots because you're never quite sure. Um, for Joe Biden, he is very predictable. They know exactly who he is and how he's going to be, and so his people are very. It's just easier for them to function. With Trump, I'm sure that you've had this feel too, where his whole energy, his whole countenance is chaos, um, all over the place. And so that's his people too. He puts them in that feeling of like, I don't know where the ground is. And so there's just this feeling of kind of a mess. Um, yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know how that can be good for somebody, especially going into a campaign where you have to be so disciplined and so on point. I just don't see how it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I just hope that Biden can capitalize because I would bring it up in the debate. I would say, the very thing you've just said to unmask the guy and say, you're just basically softening the ground because you're
Yeah.
trying to pretend that it's me. It's not me, it's you. You can't perform. You have a problem,
Right.
Basically throw it in his face. You have a few cue cards with some messages, but typically Biden doesn't do that. I've always felt for many years that the way to deal with this guy is to insult him because he thinks he's the only one that can insult other people. But he's, in quotes, insultable because he's such a dummy. He constantly does things backwards. The most recent, he brings up, he says, well, Biden should take a cognitive test. Then he doesn't name, he says, this doctor that gave me the test. And instead of calling him Jackson, he calls him Johnson. Well, you've just illustrated. I mean, it's just remarkable.
Yeah.
The pot calling the
Right.
kettle black. It's like the ultimate. This man is just like a giant irony. Everything that he says is either a confession or a projection, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Every insult, it's all, everything's a confession, right? Even when he
yeah.
calls people like lazy, we know he's lazy. All he did was watch Fox News when he was play golf and watch Fox News. That's it.
Yeah.
All of these things that it's just so he amplifies, and yeah, it's just so obvious. I'm always, I marvel at the fact that not everybody can see it. It's like it's so obvious that he just is projecting, like you said, or confessing something whenever he insults people or insults a situation, or it's always about him. It's always about
Yeah,
him.
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, the thing is, with from the astrology, this is not good territory between mid-June and mid-July. Most astrologers would say to you, stay out of it. Don't go hide somewhere under a rock, particularly you. I mean, given the way his temperament is, because someone that is more measured, more careful, can navigate through that and limit the damage. This guy doesn't know how to do that. So uh, I don't see how a debate turns out well. The sentencing, because then the sentencing is followed by the convention, and that convention has really rowdy energy. And I can only
Yeah,
imagine that it would be because he's furious about another, dressing down setback or some kind of thing. And he's been asking for it because when you behave the way he behaves, it's like he's challenging judges to apply some kind of, decent ruling to make sure that we all think, yeah, there's still a justice system here. Because most people
right,
doing what he does would be in the slammer for a year or more on that alone,
right,
to say the
right.
things he says, violate gag orders. So he's getting favored treatment. It's the total opposite of what he says. And I,
Yes.
I suspect he won't get enough for Democrats, whatever he gets, but he might get something that, will have the GOP screaming at the convention about how we're now a banana republic, like the total opposite
Right.
of what is happening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
I picked up exactly what you picked up, that this convention's going to be crazy. And it's, if he's there, if he's the nominee and if he's there, it's going to be a kind of um what I felt was kind of they try to act like, oh, everybody's falling in line behind Trump, but that is not so.
no,
There's a huge fraction or huge swath of Republicans that don't want him and don't like him and have completely turned away from him, and they're going to be at the convention too. It's not just going to be Trump people, it's going to be all Republicans are going to be there. So or a big chunk of Republicans that are in powerful positions, and some of them do not like Trump. So I felt this kind of a fighting kind of energy amongst them, but also, like you said, kind of a angry, uh, mean, loud, uh, uh, kind of a desperate energy in a lot of ways. But it does have this crazy feel and chaos. This they're always, they have that chaotic energy where they're always trying to stir things up or make things confusing. And so as a reader, when you step into that, you always feel that there's always this underlying of like confusion or chaos. And as he went into the the trial, it got more so. It felt like he was kind of almost like kind of crumbling from the inside, was kind of losing his grip and losing, and I feel that still today. That although he projects this, oh, this is I'm being railroaded and blah, he's scared. It's unnerving to him that this has happened. He something he never thought would happen has happened, and
yeah.
it's unmoored him even more.
Very true. And then the thing is, though, is that he always shows you this mentality that, on some level, is well, obviously super self-entitled, narcissistic, but also quite delusional. Back in 21, you remember that the insurrection happens, and then he kept going on and on about, I need to be reinstated. And there was this whole thing in 2021 about how, the pillow guy kept saying, yeah, in August he's going to be put back. And I kept thinking, there's no mechanism for this. You people are crazy. It's not going to happen. And now he gets convicted 34-0. Why? Because the evidence was clear as daylight, incontrovertible. And then he's phoning Mike Johnson saying, you need to restore this, you need to fix this. who's Mike Johnson? Oh, I'm going to call the Supreme Court. Like the Supreme Court can get involved in something like this. And yet they put it out there. It's some kind of, I guess, I don't know, palliative for the base, but totally delusional. And at times I think, well, yeah, he's being cynical, but I think he really believes it. I think he believes there's, because he's kind of a fascist in his wannabe mentality. I think he feels, well, it should be like that. It should be like I just make a call, and then
Right.
the Supreme Court says, well, the whole thing is invalid. Not going to happen.
Right.
So this is
Right.
something we see from him over and over. And the other thing is what you were saying about how he's crumbling from the inside. I've said a lot of times for years now, and even more so in last year and this year, that his health is at risk. At minimum, it's declining because you can see the cognitive breakdown where he forgets things, he repeats things, he slurs his words. So people will say, well, you keep saying this and he hasn't dropped, keeled over. Sometimes you don't keel over. Sometimes you just degenerate
Yeah.
slowly
You
but
fade
surely.
away. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and all the pressure can't help because it probably makes things worse. He's
Yeah.
probably doesn't sleep very well already, and it just increases the pressure and so on. So this is, to me, in a lot of ways, a bomb waiting to blow. As we go into the summer and into the election season, based on what I
Yeah.
understand.
I think so too. And I think that I've gotten to when I've looked at this, I always hear my guides say a lot's going to happen between now and the election. There's still a lot that's going to happen. And so what it looks like now is not what it's going to look like at the election. So there's events that are going to take place. And we know this, right? In this, it almost feels like with all the technology that we have and the way we're so connected with the world now, that time is collapsed because so much can happen, even just in one news cycle. So much can happen. So between now and the election seems like a century away. It seems like it's a
Yeah.
world away. And I feel like my guides keep reminding me of the fact that a lot is going to happen. And we've got our hands in a lot of things right now too. We've got our hands in Israel. We've got our hands in Ukraine. We've got our mitts kind of in different places, not just the US. So depending on what happens in these places too, that can affect things as well. And so it's going to be a rocky road, and kind of and I feel like also a road where with a party and a person, meaning Trump and the Republicans, who are even though they fight, they're in a decline, whether they admit it or can see it or not. That's what's happening. And they're clinging and clinging and clinging, and they can cling as long as they want to. And this can drag on and drag on, but that is what's happening. And part of it is just the impulse of the universe, which is to change, to grow, to evolve. That's what it does. And so they can cling as much as they want, but we're going to evolve past this. We just are. It's just the way humankind is. Even if let's go to the worst case scenario that Trump gets in. We know these things don't work. We know that that autocrats, they don't work, and particularly in the United States. You try taking over each state and see how that goes. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They have this idea that, like you said, they can just call up the Supreme Court or call up this person or that person. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be ugly, but it's doomed to fail. Let's just put it that way.
Well,
It's doomed to fail either way. And I feel like he's not going to get in again. And it actually, I was thinking, I was going to ask you, Andre, about this, because this morning I got this as I kind of reached into it. As I was watching the news, so I kind of I'm always asking what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen. And so when I reached into it again today, I got this feel of the way I felt when Le Pen and Macron were against each other the last time around. And I don't know if you remember, but Le Pen felt like she was just gaining ground and gaining ground, and she was so confident, and so, and people were very worried, and I kept seeing Macron getting in again. So I'm like, I'm not really worried about this, but it had that same feel where it felt like they're saying that Trump is doing way better than he is. They're putting, I don't know what about the polls. I feel like they're off. I feel like there's a few reasons why they're off, but it felt like that, kind of like it looks like this, but this is not what's going to happen. And it felt like that same energy of Le Pen and Macron, where it felt like Le Pen was gaining this ground, and then it wasn't even close in the end. She got completely trounced, and it felt like that kind of same energy. But when that happened, did you ever read on Le Pen and that election?
I don't remember that one. I know that I didn't think she would win, but
Right.
I don't remember as much the contrast that you're bringing up around how she was gaining. I just thought, no, this isn't going to work. But I think
Right.
the victory was bigger than I expected, I would think. But
Right. Right.
to what you say
Exactly.
about the Republicans and Trump, in a way, they give it away where they really are. Because if you think about Trump during the primary, he refused to debate anyone because it wasn't in his interest, because it would mean probable loss of part of his lead. Here, he all too readily accepted Biden's terms. This tells you
Right.
that they're not nearly as confident, including him, around, he says, oh, I got a big lead. No, you don't. And I bet their internals are telling them that there are all kinds of problems with the battleground states, basically. To win those is
Right.
not easy. So, uh, yes, this to me, I think, gives it away that they know there's a problem. And no, I mean, I can go on my intuitive feeling about it. There are times here and there where I thought, is it possible that I missed something? Every time I look at his chart in 2024, including all the way up to election day, this is not a winner's chart. He's going to lose. He's going to
Right.
lose if he doesn't end up in a sanatorium in between, which could happen.
Right.
So either or, it's not a good setup. There are all kinds of markers that you see that tell you this, and it surprises me that there are some astrologers who claim, some kind of mystical power that I don't see. That this guy
Right.
has. By the way, he won one election on a total fluke. He won because of Jill Stein's votes that should have gone to Hillary. That's the only reason he won, a very narrow victory. Everything else he's touched anywhere near any election is a loss. 17, 18, 19, 20. Anything Trump gets near, the voters vote it down. The problem is they're not voting it down in big enough numbers. So the GOP keeps
Right.
thinking, oh, well, we're pretty close. Something could break our way.
Right.
I just don't see it. I don't see it like that. And,
I don't
plain and
either. And
simple.
I feel like you, like 2016 was really just a perfect storm. That's all
Yeah.
it was. And it was a phenomenon. It was a complete outlier. And since then, loss after loss, like every year they lose. They barely won the House out of how many elections, right? We've had so many elections.
Yeah.
And even like even then, they did really badly with governors. They did really badly with, with anywhere the abortion question came up on a ballot, it was voted down. So, or it was voted down. So it's so obvious that they're on the wrong side of history, on the wrong side of so many issues, and then they've got this bombastic kind of blowhard, crazy person in, trying to run at the front of the ticket. It's all bad. It's not good. They're just loud. They're loud, and they have some powerful uh friends. They have Fox, and they have these some
Mhm.
powerful entities, but that's it. They really don't have anything else. And like you, I don't see any way that, I guess some weird thing could happen, but it just feels like it's all downhill. There doesn't
No,
seem any way that they're going to climb back to the top of the mountain
I
with
mean,
this guy and with the positions they hold.
yeah, no, that's totally the way I understand it. And then the only thing that is a little dicey is that the you know how you said earlier you have the sense that a lot could change,
Mhm.
including we could get wow what just happened shock unexpected energy.
Mhm.
This is Uranian Uranus in astrology. When it's roaming around, Uranus has this way of waking you up, sometimes very rudely, to something.
Right.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that. And the thing is, Biden has that planet very active as well. And I ask every person I collaborate with, what do you feel about Biden? Because it is fair to say that there's pressure on his health house. And the thing with astrology is that you don't know if it's health or other meanings of that house, which, for example, relate to just the work you're doing day to day. And it's pretty clear he's going to be under stress around that just because you're an election year, this kind of election especially. But then the health would be a lot more of a complication if it turned out for Biden. What's
Right.
your sense of that for Biden?
I always felt that he would get in, but that he may not finish his term.
Mm,
And so that's where the health aspect comes in. It doesn't mean that he'll pass or that he'll transition, but there may be something that is, and I feel like, he's the type of person who's normal, that if there's something wrong where he feels like he may be incapacitated or not at his best, he would step aside.
mm,
That's the kind of person that he seems to be, is that he is always putting the country first. He doesn't really put himself first
mm,
in this position. And so I have felt him stepping aside or stepping down in his term, but I always felt like he would win a second term. It's just that he may not fulfill the whole term. That's what I've always felt. And it can change. Obviously, it can change. Um, but I do think that all of this, although he's really good at managing stress and manage, I mean, he's had a lot of blows in his life, big blows, losing a wife and a daughter in a car accident at such a young, in at such a difficult time, when he's a young senator, right? Those kinds of things, they they make you tougher. And so I do feel like he's tough when it comes to stress, but I do feel like this has been hard on him with his son going through the court system and all of that, and things that really pull at his heart. I think has been really hard. And also, even seeing, the Republican Party and some of the people that were his friends, like Lindsey Graham, go into such a weird, crazy mode, I think has been heartbreaking for him. Um, and that also has been very, it's it's been hard on him. So I think these things, yeah, he's still a human being. So these things can play a part in heavy stress and heavy heartbreak. And I think that does have, or potentially can have, an effect on your health. And so that's kind of what I've seen. And yeah, that's what I've seen. Or he may feel like at some point the country's in good hands. I'm going to step aside and let the new generation take over. That could happen too. That just in his own mind, it's a good time to step aside and let people see what Kamala Harris would be like as a leader. He may do something like that. But I've always felt him kind of not fulfilling his second term fully.
mm. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the other thing that um, adds to the profile. I've always known this for years that at 2024, Kamala's chart is really good this
Mhm.
year between right around now and the election point and beyond. The Gemini Jupiter, that's a rising sign. That's really good in terms of projecting yourself into the world and people liking you. I noticed that a lot of these GOP pundits will say, "Oh, she's not a popular person." Just watch now how all
Right.
it takes is a good Jupiter to suddenly raise your popularity. And she has the perfect issue because she can speak to women
Yes.
about what these crazy people have done, which I think is tactically and strategically the stupidest move. I cannot believe that they did what they did. Talk about giving the other side a cudgel to come after you.
Right.
Women are the greater part of the electorate in numbers, and on top of that, they're angry, and they should be. I'm amazed that a single woman votes for anything
I am
GOP.
too.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed that you could make an excuse for any of this behavior. It's almost like they're saying women aren't people. Like, wait, hold on, how does this work? Anyways, like in the end, this thing around how in history Trump will be seen as the critical point when women rose to a much higher level of influence and power. So it's the opposite of what they're trying to achieve, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it also shows that, again, kind of that Achilles heel that they have, which is that short-term thinking. They, in some ways, like with the courts, they were kind of long-term thinkers, but so often, especially today's Republican Party, they are really just the next news cycle. They don't really think past a certain point. And I think I was gonna get your feelings on who's Trump running mate might be, because I feel a big disappointment with people that pretending to be excited, but they're disappointed in who he chooses. Um, what have you gotten anything, or have you read on any of the potential
You
uh,
know, I've
vice
looked at it.
president?
I mean, I've looked at it, but the thing with Trump is that, in a way, he's really easy to read around, those biases that he has. Uh, so one of them is that he can't bear to have someone that might in any way upstage him or
Yes.
make him look bad. So you can start to certain people with for certain reasons. MTG, doesn't have the right look. She doesn't have the right. Forget that. But
Yeah.
then, if you think of someone that is in any way competent and assertive, that's not going to work because that would upstage him. So that's why he chose Mike Pence. It's like choosing a
Yeah.
lamppost to stand next to you and
Yeah.
just nod, and then and then even that isn't enough for you. Then you try to kill the guy. So it's amazing that Pence is not supporting him. So, for instance, that South Dakota or North Dakota, I can't remember, one of the Dakotas, that governor
Yeah.
is probably a good
Yeah.
candidate because he also has a lot of money, and Trump is always
Mhm.
angling for some kind of money source somewhere because despite saying that he's super rich, he's nowhere nearly as rich as he says. He's constantly
Right.
grifting. So that's my feeling that it'd be someone like that. I don't know that he would pick. Do you get the feeling he would pick Tim Scott or um, anyone like that? I don't know.
I don't think so.
To
I see. I always get that he doesn't like Tim Scott, that he doesn't like him like as a person.
mm,
I don't think he thinks it helps him to have, with his particular base, that it helps him to have someone in a minority group on the ticket. I think he thinks that will hurt him, because his whole base is white. It's all white. That's just the way it is. And for what he may get, and again, it's all, what's in it for me, that's his thing. So I think that the payback for him with Tim Scott would be too little, and he doesn't like him. um I get a strong feeling about JD Vance. I feel like he's like in the running and kind of um
yeah, that's a
a
possibility.
possibility, because he kind of is that. He has that the look that he might want, because he's everything's about looks for him. um and he's also such a sycophant. He's always kissing up to Trump, and he also is a who would do what he wanted him to do. I think he really wants loyalty above all else, because that's what let him down last time. People wouldn't do what he said, and he wants people that will not question what he says. And I think JD Vance is one of those people. Um, I also think, though, that he's gonna make the decision, because I feel like the people around him now are people that just tell him yes, and that's always spells disaster for any artist, any politician. When you just get yes people around you, that's where you make mistakes and start misstepping and start doing the wrong thing, because you're not you're not taking into account anything else, just your own feeling. And I think Trump's in that mode of um, everybody else has let me down. Nobody's doing what I want them to do, so I'm going to make the decisions. And so even like I said, I think there's going to be some disappointment around the VP because I think he's just going to do what he wants to do. And it's not going to be necessarily the right decision.
So you mean disappointment for who? For the GOP?
I
Or
think from the GOP, I think they're going to be it's going to be kind of like a big buildup to a letdown. I think they're going to be kind of disappointed. I think they'll act like they're happy about it, but I feel like it's going to be kind of feel like, oh no, you know, what is
yeah,
he doing?
yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing for sure is that speaking of sudden things, that convention in mid-July, that's a Mars-Uranus conjunction, and and not just they're conjoined, really challenging one of his planets, which the probably the most logical connection would be that 3 or 4 days earlier, he's likely to get slapped a little more than on the wrist by the judge. So
Yeah.
then he brings that, as his complaint. But Uranus has a way of, wow, what the heck just happened here? So this is a convention. In a way, I'm really looking forward to see just what the heck blows up there because it's a super risky moment. And presumably, he would announce. Is that when he would announce the? What's the timeline? I haven't followed that too closely.
I
When
don't
would he
know.
say?
Maybe he'll announce his pick at the convention, or right after. I think it's around there. I did feel like July was going to be a really, really particularly negative uh, month for Trump. Not that he needs any more like negative stuff
Yeah,
happening,
no, I
but
think you're
July
right.
did feel really bad.
It is.
And
Yeah,
it even felt health wise. It felt like in every way, it was just like his luck, his health, um, it, decisions he makes. It just all felt really negative. So
yeah.
we'll see with that.
I no,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree because what happens is there are planetary stations coming up in late June, early July. They're not good for him at all. Hence why I was saying about the debate and it even gets they're close enough to affect the sentencing and the convention, but definitely the debate period, the end of June. And then in July you get 2 more stations. Normally I wouldn't overplay Chiron, but Chiron just happens to be in this really bad spot for him, stationing, and right next to Era stationing. July is bad. I agree with you 100%. Very bad.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
always, with astrology, if you open up your ephemeris and you see stations, they tell you a lot about what's going on in the world and in people's lives if it links to their charts. So, yeah, most definitely for Trump, solstice to midsummer, best thing he could do is stay out of the limelight. But how do you stay out of the limelight when you can't? You know,
Right,
it's
exactly.
the
And I wanted to ask you, Andre, because although you come at it in a different way with astrology, you're still moving into these energies, whether,
yeah. You have
it
to though.
ends.
You do
Yeah,
like I mean
yeah,
you can't. No astrologer. Like I'll give you an example. There's this British guy who Steve Judd is a good astrologer. So he's projecting because, and it's a projection. There's no way he can know this unless he is tuning in with his intuition to say, well, I'm looking at
right.
these movements. I say this. So he's saying that because Biden has health pressures, Trump has health pressures, and the two conventions look really, really rowdy, both of them. He's saying neither of them is going to make it to the election. That we'll have two different people.
Really?
I think to me
Wow.
that's a bit
Yeah,
further than I see.
right,
In other words,
right.
I don't agree with that. I think that's a little bit too far. But the thing is, how can one astrologer? I know what he's talking about when he says what he's saying. I can look
Yeah.
it up. It's obvious, right? So he's reaching a conclusion that I think, well, maybe you're getting some thing that tells you this. So
Right,
hence, yes, just a long answer to your question that it's not just that you look at planets and you say this is it. You have to then
right.
kind of gauge the overall pattern. Even the meta model is always in play. We're in this period of time when we have the echoes of the Civil War, some echoes of the Second World War. That's why the entire world is pretty topsy turvy
Mhm.
at the moment. So you have to work it all in. You can't just say, well, this is so because of something, right? Now, on the other hand, it is true that when you do enough astrology, you start to know things that you go, I don't like that. That's a thumbs down. Trump has too many of those. Even on election night. Election night feels like a loss, and then a typical, no, it didn't happen. Really, I won.
Right.
The
Right.
usual Trump response, but it doesn't feel like big good news. No, from the patterns that are happening then at that point, right? So those are pretty black and white. I don't know if that's too long an answer to your question, but
No, no,
that's
because I
yes,
think that, and also when you and just like you're talking about the guy who the British guy who's a astrologer, even when you get information, you still have to interpret it. You've got to interpret what that means in the
right.
landscape we're in. And so I would think that, that part of it is kind of feeling out the energy or feeling it out. And even though you have it's sciency, it's very like cut and dry. You have these where this
Yeah,
planet's going to be and where this thing is happening, but you still have to kind of rely on your own feeling to interpret it.
correct, correct. Give me another example. I know enough Vedic astrology to get suspicious of Vedic astrologers because I'll hear what they're saying and then I'll think, wait a second, you're not thinking this through. So one of the things with Trump is that in this system they call the dashas, Jupiter came in a few years ago and it's part of his win, but then he had a lot of losses within the same period. Now they're
Right.
calling, they think it's really good that there's a Jupiter Venus dasha in his chart, which would normally be, oh, that's great, the two most benefic planets. The problem is Venus is in the 12th sign, no matter what system you use, Vedic or um, or Western. As soon as you get a 12 sign planet involved in something, what's really beckoning is criminality, prison energy, if you're like that. I mean, otherwise you'd be a meditator.
Right.
He's not a meditator. He doesn't do any of that.
Right.
He does only all he
Yeah,
does is
I don't think
crimes.
so either.
So to me, that's linking to a whole lot of problems and a whole lot of trouble. But you have to be willing to admit that, and by otherwise you just willy nilly call it. Oh, it's a great moment. My feeling is that a lot of these people that make these predictions and have been really strident about it, they were doing it especially when the polls looked awful last year, if you remember, post Gaza, October, November, December, Trump looked like he had a huge lead. Well, I hate to tell you this, but look in history, and Mitt Romney was ahead at one point.
Mhm.
The guy who ran against Reagan back in the 80s, and he had a huge lead and then disappeared. So you got to wait. Polls will have relevance as we go into late summer, early fall. Before that, people are not engaged enough, to give you
And I think,
a good
there
read.
is America's weird in that that they really do value entertainment
Hmm.
in a weird way. And I think that Trump is he has an entertainment value. He's so weird. It is like front row seat at the circus. However, it doesn't mean people are going to put the clown in the White House. It means they watch him, they think it's crazy. He might draw eyeballs to what's going on because what he says is nuts, and how far will he go? That weird entertainment obsession that America has to make everything into a show. However, it doesn't mean that they're going to trust him with the nuclear, codes. That doesn't mean that, but it means that maybe they are watching the news because of him. Maybe they are engaged because he's so weird. So in that way, maybe he is drawing people in, but it doesn't translate into a vote at
No,
all. It
no.
is just this captivating thing that he has to make people, even people that don't like him will watch him because what's he going to do next? What's going to happen? He keeps people on the edge of their seat. And I think it appeals to that weird thing that Americans have about everything wanting to be entertainment or wanting to be a show, even the news, you know, but it does not translate into a vote at all.
No, no, and the thing is you get the canary in the coal mine type of thing. The warning, one would be an obvious one, which in 2020 they surely must be honest enough with themselves to know that there couldn't have been any kind of cheating because voters were voting down Trump and electing Republicans to the House, for example, in the same ballot. How can that be? I mean, think about how
Exactly.
crazy that is. And then the other
Exactly.
canary in the coal mine in Arizona, every single person that was doing the MAGA trip, including Carrie Lake, those people, none of them made it. There was one person who didn't talk like that, and he got elected in the same state,
Right.
in the same election. This is
Hmm.
pretty obvious stuff. Now, it's not by gazillions of votes, but it's by enough votes that the voters are saying no, which are that sliver of independence and so on, that you could say they're less informed, they're not as interested in politics as we are, but it's still not a good sign. It's telling you this guy
Right.
is hampered. He's the wrong person to run with. But hey, what can I tell you? They had a chance to get rid of him. If they had gotten rid of him in 2021 when they had the chance, now they would be much more dangerous because now they could have a normal person there who could argue their points. But even then, I'm pretty suspicious because one of the things about these people that are fascist, they need chaos. I mean, yes, like you said, he's always trying to create chaos, but it's really helpful when the chaos is already there so that no one questions the fact that it's there, like was the case in the 1930s. But right now, the US's economy, if you call it a bad economy, it's the best economy in the world among
Right.
all the countries. Uh,
Right.
Lots of markers are, gas is going down, inflation is way more under control. There is little to grab onto. And then if you throw on top of that the women's issue, which I think is by far the trump card, no pun intended, because Trump is now a swear word, but
Right. Right.
you, you, you bring that up a lot. And if that weren't enough, our brilliant Supreme Court makes a ruling saying that bump stocks, they're not automatic enough. I mean,
Right.
like you're a
Right.
split second away from blowing away 40 people. We can't count that. There are lots of talking points that put these people in a bad spot, and Trump has to defend it. And I hope that Biden brings these things up, like saying, for instance,
Yeah.
who brought in, who caused Roe v. Wade? You said it yourself, right?
Right.
You are
So
responsible.
proud of it.
There's no way out of this one. There's no. He's going to say the states, the states. No, I'm sorry, the states, nothing. You did this, right? That's always
Well,
your
and if
response.
we've learned, I think you're right. And if we've learned anything over the past how many years of all of these, elections since Trump, that America is they may be a little more conservative than we thought, but they're not extreme. They're
No.
they're very much there. There's a huge swath in the middle that's just in the middle, and they don't like extremes on either end. And so all of this stuff where it maybe does feed that little tiny cult section of the base. It does. They're so easy to play. They know exactly what they want. The rest of the country is not there. They're just not. And the more they do this, and I feel like, Trump is the type of person who he never pulls back, right? He always doubles down.
Hmm.
And in that situation, it's not going to be good for them. They can try to do that. And it will fire up his base and make them happy. But that is not where the rest of the country is. And they don't seem to be getting it through their head that the rest of the country, you can bully all you want and you can use the courts and stuff to a point. But if the people are not there, the people are not there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. It's that group in the middle that decides it, and they've signaled repeatedly that they don't like this. And I don't understand how, if they didn't like it in 22 from the things that were being said then, how are they going to like hearing, hey, I'm going to round up 18 million people and put them in concentration camps?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like that'll be just perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, please.
Exactly. Who's going to
Yeah.
go for that?
Yeah.
What normal person is going to go for that? So,
Yeah, which by the way, those are debate questions, and if I'm Biden, I'm pounding on that and say, no, explain it again. No, I'm going to give you up my time, and I'm going to give you another 2 minutes to tell the country how you're going to make that work. Tell us, because he's going to
yeah,
start meandering. There's no possible way to defend this kind of thing, right? Unless he says, well, I
exactly.
didn't say it, then I wish they would just like play the tape, because I mean, with Trump, is amazing the number of times he'll say, no, I didn't say that. Like when he said, I didn't say lock her up, and there's a video showing like 50 instances of
Right.
literally saying it coming out of his mouth. So
Exactly. And again, his base, they'll just buy it. We know that They
Yeah,
just listen to him. They don't care. But there's a whole, another 75% of people that are just normal and will say,
right,
"Oh no, he said it a bunch of times. I heard him."
right.
So, right, they're not.
Yeah,
They can fool. What is that? The saying? They can fool some of the people, all of the time, or all the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time.
exactly, exactly. And I mean,
Yeah.
even if I mean, you say 75. I wish that it were 75. It's probably not quite that big, but let's just say it's big enough. It's big enough that yes, maybe you only get, I don't know, 53%. I mean, this has been a
Right.
pattern that's been repeating. He has this ceiling. He can't break through the mid 40s because that's all there
Yes.
is. By the way, this is not new. Mitt Romney ran into the exact same problem. These people are in a constant 5% deficit. The only way they can do
Right.
it is through, like what happened in 2016. You get this, inside straight thing where all of a sudden you get the states you need and you win. But it's tough. It's tough, and you can also have it go the other way, like what happened with Biden, where he kind of ran the table. That's what drove Trump completely nuts when he lost Arizona, he lost Georgia.
Yeah.
He just couldn't accept it. But these are states now that are very close, and when you play these games where you defend the indefensible, the people in the middle are likely to say, no, I don't want to do this. I mean, I could be Republican, but no, I don't, no. Concentration camps,
Right. Right.
that's going too far.
And have you looked at our RFK Jr.? Have you looked at his what's going on with him? Because I felt like he might pull out at some point, but um that's a concern, right? At that third party, like it was in 16. But
Yes.
he seems to be hurting Trump a little bit more than Biden. So what did you have you
Well,
looked at him?
I had always thought from what I know of his chart, he's one that, as far as I know, there's no birth time. There's only a birthday.
Uh-huh.
Just with the birthday, that once you get into now, June, July, into the election, he doesn't do as well because he was getting a lot of Jupiter assistance up to the end of May. And
Mhm.
so the latest I came across is that now he's running into money problems. And so, no, I don't see him as the big disruptor that people say he is.
Right.
This is where, I'll say something, I think, fairly definitively, and then I'll see comments on my channel. Yeah, but RFK, here's the thing. If you say something is going to happen in a certain way, you can't bring in anything like, well, what if there's an earthquake? It doesn't matter. The chart says what it says. So RFK, if I, in other words, if I say Trump's chart is really, really bad at election time, you can't then say, well, but it could be okay because of RFK. No, it can't. That's completely breaking the
Right.
rules. So
Right.
as far as I'm concerned, no, RFK, probably what you say, that he takes about the same from either side, or that he just fades away and doesn't become a factor. Nah,
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, I've never seen him being a factor either. I just wondered about that because I know that comes up every so often I think it is because of the Jill Stein factor. But you have to remember too that 2016, you know, Hillary, she was a polarizing figure. A lot of Democrats and the whole Bernie thing with her, people were upset with her, part of the Democratic Party. And then you had also Trump was an unknown factor. And the country had this obsession with we need to run the country like a business. We need to run the country like a business. So they've always wanted kind of to try the businessman or the CEO in the White House. It didn't work, clearly. And and he's not an unknown factor anymore. He was in 2016. Nobody knew what he would do or how he would be, or if he would kind of blow up the system and make it more, but now we know. He's not he
Yeah.
had that on his side at the time, and he doesn't have that anymore.
Another point of attack. I mean, that would be another one that I would throw in his face. You're not a CEO. You played a CEO in a
Right.
TV program, but no CEO. I don't know of any CEO that bankrupts casinos. If you bankrupt casinos, you should not be a CEO. Okay, that's one. And if you say,
Exactly.
"Oh, I have a wonderful company," no, you don't. First of all, you're hundreds of millions in debt, all justifiable. You're not a good CEO. You're lousy at it, right? So
Exactly.
that people see you on TV and they think you're a CEO, Well, that's what they
Right.
think they see, but it's not true. You're just a pretend
You
CEO.
played one on TV.
Yeah, you played one on TV. I mean, that's all that Trump. That's what Trump is. And his chart
Yeah.
shows you this. He lives in a world of illusion, but he is
Yes.
very, very good at gathering people's energies and getting them to go along with him because he
Yes.
taps into their anger. That's in fact
Yeah.
his relationship to the U.S. chart is his sun is right next to the U.S. Mars, which is the planet of war and combat and anger, and that's what he stokes in the populace.
Yes.
And it's racially motivated, which is the same thing as the Civil War, blah blah blah. But is it a winner? I say no, it's not. It just isn't.
No.
It's just that the
No.
problem is you wish that these things could be litigated and just let's do it and get it over with, and instead we're
Right.
tortured here. We gotta go day
I
after day
know.
after day, seeing the
It
next
is, yeah.
insanity.
It's
Yeah,
a battle of wills. It really is
yeah,
because people, especially Democrats, I feel like they're really tired. They're just tired. They're exhausted. And I think, we just have to pick our battles, um, kind of be aware of our energy day to day. When we need a day off from the news, take it. When we need a day of downtime, take it. Really, you know, ma manage your own like stress and stuff just so you can make it to the finish line, because I think people get ginned up every single day all day long. They can't do it, and they'll just say I'm out. So I hope that people will just be really aware of where you are day to day and do and do what you need to do to stay in the fight, because it is going to be kind of that endurance race, to the end. We
yeah,
kind of have to all have endurance at this point.
yeah. It's true. It's true. And I mean, the thing is, when you say stay in the fight, I mean, stay in the fight is really, really simple. You're going to vote. That's 80% of staying in the fight. The other 20,
Yes.
maybe someone you could influence. But
Yes.
really, you're not out in the street,
Right.
punching people. There's no fight. If you're in that mentality, oh, I just saw another one, that makes you tense. And then, if you believe in supernormal energies and they're very real, I mean, imagine if all Democrats understood this. Just stay calm, and then as a force, we have the calm force. Calm energy is very magnetic. It'll bring about the better result, right? It does you no
Yes.
good at all to be tense and worried, and that's not helpful. It's like it's inside your own psyche, produces zero. Well, it produces negative results often because it'll produce possibly bad health, or it'll cause you to do something against your interests and so forth. So,
Hmm.
bottom line, just stay relaxed, stay calm. The indicators, as far as I see it, they're not against us, they're for us,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But it's also true that democracy is super messy and you don't get big wins. It rarely, like you
Right.
only get 80-20 happens in Russia because it's not a real democracy, right? When it's democracy at gunpoint. Most democracies are really tight. Look at Israel, for example. Israel is
Right.
completely split down the middle. They're one of the most thriving democracies since the middle of the last century. They can't agree among themselves, right? And
Right.
what is happening in France and all kinds of places, there's a lot of division. So you don't go in like, say, Macron today. Macron is not going to beat Marie Le Pen 80-20. It would
Right.
probably be maybe 60-40, maybe even less. Maybe it would be 52-48. You just need to win, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's disastrous when you lose, making the wrong choice. Like what I think the UK. I don't know what you think about this, but I think they made a huge mistake with Brexit. That to me,
Yes. Yeah. And I think, and you feel it there. When I was there, visiting my daughter, you could feel that there had been a shift. They're ready for a change. 12 years for one party, it's too long. It's too long, because they have their own ideas of how things should be. And when there's no shift in that, it creates imbalance. And so I think they're ready for the labor to come in again and have a different have some different ideas in the mix. It's like here with, Republicans really, they have one idea, which is tax cuts for corporations and rich people, and that's really their it.
Mhm.
That's it. And then
Yeah,
they have these weird other, cultural things that they try to do that aren't popular at all, with guns and, abortion and things like that. And it's very similar in the UK.
Yeah.
A lot of the cultural things are just not popular. They're like Brexit. It may have looked good for a minute, but when it turned out to be just a complete garbage, people catch on. They're not, they're not stupid. They're willing to try new things, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And so they'll go the other way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, I think, there, if we go to the meta model, a lot of it is that whatever can be said about individuals, Trump, Biden, uh, whoever, Macron, Netanyahu, the broader pattern, you can see that going into the middle of the decade, 25, 26, 27, the energies are really shifting in the world. And the question people have is which way are they shifting? They don't look to me like they're shifting toward fascism. They're shifting the other way, but we're paying the price of litigating it, of having to even consider the idiocy
Yes.
of this whole thing. That someone like Trump could say, I'm going to be a dictator on day one, and I'm going to create concentration camps, and I'm going to go after all my enemies. You're thinking, what are you, crazy? And I think for a thing like that, you would need uh, something like what happened in the 1930s, where the whole world back then was also in a lot of chaos. And then that led to
Yes.
not just Hitler, but a number of people, Mussolini, Franco in Spain, the Japan was also really worked up and so forth. It just isn't there now. Maybe something
Yeah.
will develop, but I don't see it. I just don't. It's being
Yeah.
manufactured,
Yeah, it is.
as a fake
It
thing.
is.
Yeah.
So and because it's manufactured and because there are certain news stations that will record,
Yes.
they'll go, we'll have these weird, interviews with Putin, making him look like a great guy. So that is it. That is appealing to such a small, you know, not many people fall for it. Not many people are on board with it. But it makes you feel like, oh, is that what's happening? Oh, should I be afraid? It causes that stir of maybe this is the way it's going, but I'm like you. I don't see it at all. It's just not the way it's again, the universe, it's not the impulse of the universe to move
No.
backwards like that, not in
No.
that way. It
No.
may take a one step backwards and then move forward again, or be held in place. And that's more of the feeling I have right now, is that we're kind of being like held in this almost like a middle space of what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? But that's the most that's going to happen. We're going to keep moving forward, even though we have these moments of which way should we go. And those
Yeah.
are the points where people get very nervous, and very worried. But like you, I just don't see it at all.
Yeah. No. I think we're pretty much in full agreement. It's just the way each person then figures out how to, you know, work with that. And I mean, I can't say this enough. Just settle yourself. Settle yourself. Have faith. Because, by the way, there are lots and lots and lots of positive markers. For all the negative markers you can bring up, there are lots of positive markers. And I often look at it like a sporting event where I like watching sports and all it says, well, which team is better? You always want to be on the side of the better team. Your team might lose, but most of the time they're going to win. Our team is
Right,
much better. We have much, much better points to work with. They've
right,
got a lot of problems, to defend, and they've made them. They're like
right,
that thing about
exactly.
the dog that caught the car. Now you live with it, right? They've
Yep, that's
taken these
exactly right. That's
positions.
it.
So,
No, you're right.
all right. Well, it's
You're
been
right.
great as always with you, talking with you.
Oh, thank
So,
you. Thank you so much for having me, Andre.
oh
And
no, it was a
I'm
pleasure.
so glad we solved all the world's
Yeah.
problems. It sounds like it's
No, no, no. I
once
bet.
again.
No, I can think of a whole bunch of other things. I think if it, let's meet again. We were saying in a couple of weeks. Let's
Yeah,
meet
so we'll
again
meet in a couple weeks on
and
my channel and do this again, because it's going to be forever changing in 2 weeks. I am sure there's going to be a whole new,
yeah, 2 weeks.
batch of stuff that comes up.
In fact, 2 weeks. It might even be. Isn't that post debate? 1724. Yeah, I think it's post debate. So
Okay,
we'd have
so
that. But
that'll be a great time to meet. Yeah.
yeah, and maybe what we can do is whatever this triggers in your mind, I'll start making a list of points that I know I can bring up then, and you could do the same. And then plus, I'm sure we'll get
Fantastic.
our viewers saying, "Well, did you think of this? Did you think of that?" So we can have that as
Yes,
well.
absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely. I love it.
it was a pleasure, and bye everyone for now.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.